Good evening, race fans, and Happy New Year, and welcome back to season number 9 of the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series. Tonight we are down in Lakeland, Florida for round number 3 of the season at the USA International Speedway. And I'll tell you what, race fans, this is a little bit of an interesting track. It is one of the longer tracks we're going to here this season, coming in at 0.75 miles or 1.2 kilometers in length. And something that I've always found kind of interesting about this track, especially now that we're getting a little close to it being especially relevant, is that this track doesn't have a whole lot of real life history behind it. It opened up back in 1995 only to close down in 2008, got added to the iRacing.com platform in 2008, and now here we are in 2023. We are getting very close to the USA International Speedway being available to drive on iRacing for a longer period of time than it was ever open to race at in the real world. So I always just find that interesting how sim racing as a medium can work a little bit as a way to preserve a little bit of real world racing history out there. Another little bit of an interesting tidbit about this track being one of the free tracks on the iRacing.com platform and one of the ones that you go to as a rookie and is one that's very well known by oval drivers in this community. The USA International Speedway has found its way onto the schedule for every single season of the ASRC Oval Series since its inception. So we've raced here 8 times before, gonna be making it number 9 here tonight. And all 8 of those previous races at this track had different winners every single time. Some of them drivers still here in the league, other ones that have retired a little bit ago. Jason Gardner, Benjamin Harst, Brian Lockwood, Tyler McRae, Charles Cruz, Brad Ringer, David Sluiter, Anthony Nadell, all drivers that have picked up wins here in the ASRC Oval Series at this track. A handful of those drivers currently present out in the field here tonight, right now, so definitely going to be interesting to see if any of these drivers are going to be able to etch their names into the record books as being the first driver in the ASRC Oval Series to get more than one win at this track, or maybe call it a little bit of a curse, will continue, and we will see a new driver for the 9th time in a row down here in Lakeland, Florida. That said, of course, we are still fairly early on into this season. This is only round number 3 of the Oval Series season number 9, so if you're interested in coming out and competing in the league, everyone is welcome. No requirements for joining other than being a clean and respectful driver. So if you're interested in coming out, be sure to check out www.asrcracing.com or check out at ASRC Racing on Twitter, or just look them up on the iRacing League directory. We run the Oval Series every Monday night. Practice opens at 9 p.m. Eastern, qualifying at 10 p.m. Eastern, and then the race at 10 p.m. Eastern. And sure enough, drivers making their way down to the starting grid now. So let's take a quick look down there and see just who all is making up the field here tonight for this 100 lap event. Starting out on the pole here tonight, one of the Dropping Bombs Racing members, that's going to be the number 10 of Steven Rex. It is outside in the 145, the winner of last week's race back at the Stafford Motor Speedway, also for Dropping Bombs Racing. That's going to be the 145 of Travis Sukup. Back in P number 3, making it a triple threat, a little bit of podium trophies going out to another Dropping Bombs Racing member and the other driver to have picked up a win this season. That's the number 99 of Tyler McRae. Back in P number 4, in that number 70 machine, Mr. Jason Mong having a very solid start here tonight. He's going to round out row number 2. Back to the 5th position going to be the other Jason, the 93 of Jason Gardner. Going back in P number 5, with Bryce Walker in the 16 machine making his second ever start with the ASRC Oval Series. His first start being over a year ago, but he has done a couple of dirt races here with us. Back in P number 7, going to be the 007 ASRC entry of Nico Morelli. 12th, going to go back to David Schmidt in the 12. 9th, going to go back to the 337 of Mr. Bill Watkins for Dirtbag Racing. And finally, rounding out the field here tonight in the Wrangler entry, the driver out of Spencer, Iowa. That's going to be the 56 of Mr. Dave Sierrick, also for Dirtbag Racing. So, 10-car field out here tonight. Definitely going to be a bit of an interesting one, I reckon. Whole lot of drivers with a whole lot of speed under their hoods out here in this track here tonight. And of course, USA is a track that has always put on some very competitive racing here in the ASRC Oval Series, so I am definitely excited to see just what these drivers are going to be able to do. That said, pace car is off. Green flag going to be coming up in the air in just a moment. P1, 2, and 3, all drivers for Dropping Bombs Racing, and immediately a move down to the inside by that 16 of Bryce Walker. Going to be picking up a position on Jason Gardner. That was a very quick move. There was no hesitation there, but sometimes hesitation at the start is all it can take to throw you off your game. And it looks like for the most part everyone has negotiated the start of this race fairly decently. And you know what they say? Cautions breed cautions. The start of the race, arguably one of the most dangerous. That said, there does seem to be trouble a little bit further back in the back. Nico Morelli looks like he had to come to a stop. He's got it rolling again in that 007. No caution going to come out, but definitely a bit of trouble for that 007 driver. Not more trouble. Jason Gardner losing a couple of positions just like that. We're not seeing anything about him going off the track here tonight, but definitely an unfortunate start for these two drivers. See if we can't take a look back here really quick and see what happened to Nico Morelli. That sent him off the track, and looks like that 12 car got around, and with the connection issues he seems to be having, not a whole lot that Nico Morelli could have done to avoid it. But both drivers back out on the speedway, both drivers still rolling. Looks like potentially trouble. Or maybe not, it could just be the connection issues that 12 car is having. It looked like there might have been an incident, but no caution flags out. Everyone is still rolling full speed, no issues whatsoever. Travis Sukup still the leader of this race. Stephen Rex and Tyler McRae just behind. These three drivers have been setting some blistering lap times all throughout this season, and looking back at last week's race at Stafford, was a 1-2-3 finish for the Dropping Bombs Racing team, and then back in round number 1, a 1-2 finish for the Dropping Bombs Racing team as Stephen Rex was unable to attend. So Dropping Bombs been putting on some incredibly impressive runs throughout this season, and sure enough, they're already building up quite the gap to the rest of the field behind them. Throw these top three under a little bit of a blanket, and then it's a 2-second gap between McRae and Mong. So whole lot of ground to make up, but still a whole lot of time left in this race too. Like I said, this is one of the larger tracks that we're going to this season, if not possibly the largest. So fuel strategy definitely going to be playing into this race no matter how you try to frame it. And we've seen that pit stops can be a major deciding factor in these short track races. You're going to have a little bit more time to play with to make mistakes here tonight, as with this track being a little bit longer, there's a little bit more time that you can spend on pit lane without getting lapped. But either way, big mistakes could be big trouble for these drivers. And speaking of making mistakes, Travis Sukup getting incredibly loose off the corner there in that 145. On the other end of the field though, Nico Morelli recovering from that lap 1 incident he's got around that 12 of David Schmidt. Going to be bumping him up into the 9th position. not where that 007 wants to be, but it's better than last. Just a matter of keeping on pushing, hoping that the race plays out to his favor in that 007 entry. I believe this is the first time that we have actually seen Nico Morelli out here on the track here this season, but definitely always great to see him out here with ASRC. Morelli, one of the drivers that has been here with the league since even before I showed up, and I do have some fairly fond memories of competing with him, like how I opened up my season here with ASRC by accidentally wrecking him on, I believe, lap 5 of the opening race of season 2 of the Oval Series. Nothing personal, Morelli. And maybe history is repeating itself just a little bit, but he's still got that car going, so all things considered, definitely not out of this race in that 007 machine. That said, paint being traded just a little bit up in the front. Positions for the lead have changed hands once again, and once again our pole sitter of Steven Rex is back in control of this race. Tyler McRae just behind. McRae up a position from where he started. These three drivers, they may all be teammates, they may all practice together, they may all tune their cars with advice from one another. But I'll tell you what, they do not hold any punches when it comes to a race day. These three drivers, they all want to win, they all want to take home the championship, and they are all willing to race their teammates hard to be able to do it. There are no team orders here with these fellas. And I'll tell you what, Tyler McRae getting a bit loose off the corner there. Gonna have to keep an eye on these guys and just see how this plays out, because McRae, not a driver that is going to be taking it easy on our race leader. A little bit further behind, Jason Gardner back up in front of Bryce Walker. Walker, a driver, if you remember, back at the very start of this race, immediately changed lanes and managed to cut Gardner off for that position before even getting down into turn 1. Looks like Gardner managed to get the position back. Walker potentially having a bit of trouble on corner exit in that number 16 machine, because Gardner built up a pretty handy gap very quickly in that number 93 machine. That's going to bump him up into the top 5. And looking to see if he can't get his way back up to the other Jason. Feels like really every time I talk about the two Jasons, they're always next to each other in terms of position on the track. And sure enough, coming into this race, they are also next to each other on the championship standings. So a little bit of a friendly rivalry between the two drivers that share the same name. Definitely going to have to keep an eye on Mr. Gardner and see if he's going to be able to get his way back up to Mong, but that is a 4.5 second deficit that he has to work with here, so definitely no easy feat. A caution might be a little bit in the favor of Jason Gardner, but so far we've only had one caution the entire season, and that was due to a driver having a bit of a real-world emergency and not having time to pull his car off the track before exiting the sim. So a caution that really was kind of unavoidable and wasn't actually due to car-to-car contact. So I don't think banking on a caution is going to be the play in terms of pit strategy. It's just the racing has been a little bit too clean to be able to hope for one so far this season. A little bit further back, Morelli starting to put the pressure down on Bill Watkins. That 007 machine gaining ground, and Watkins technically driving the 337. You can't see it on the side of that all-white street stock, and sure enough, Watkins going to pull it up high and potentially even lift off the throttle and just let Morelli by. Watkins might just be thinking, I'm going to let Morelli burn up his stuff and try and get some passes in the long run just on tire strategy. Dave Sierrick just behind in that Wrangler entry, putting some pressure on him as well. Going to have to see, is he going to do the same thing? No, he is not. This time around, not going to be lifting and just letting the other driver by. Sierek in that 56 having a little bit of work cut out for him. Now, if I do remember correctly, this is actually Sierek's first start in just a little while. Let me see if I can't look back at our stats for last season. Looks like Dave only made a single start back in season number 8, so not a driver that has been able to attend very regularly, but it's definitely always great to see him out here and rocking that little bit of a historic paint scheme. It's not a paint scheme that was ever run on an actual street stock to my knowledge, but of course a throwback to one of Dale Earnhardt's classic NASCAR paint schemes in that old Wrangler blue and yellow hot rod. So always great to see these paint schemes out here, and always great to see what these drivers have to bring to the table. But still, Sierek really putting the pressure on Watkins. Watkins just doing his best to run his race, hold on, and not have a little bit of chaos, because we are only a quarter of the way into this race right now. His best play might just be to try and hang on later in this race before he starts pushing, and letting Sierek by might just make that a little bit harder. Up in the front of the field, these three drivers still all up under a blanket, still not letting up whatsoever. Steven Rex still in the lead of this one. Tyler McRae is almost looking to set up a pass there, it looks like, but might have gotten into the wall just a little bit in that number 99 machine. Honestly, if you didn't know that they were all Dropping Bombs Racing members, just looking at their paint schemes, you probably wouldn't have been able to tell. Rex does have the Dropping Bombs logo on the bumper of that number 10 machine, and I believe Tyler McRae does as well, but in terms of colors and in terms of patterns, not a whole lot similar between these three drivers. But let's be real here, I used to be part of a racing team too, and none of our paint schemes match, and frankly, that's not really important. It's just about driving together with your friends and having a good time. And I'll tell you what, these three up here battling it out for the podium look like they are having a blast down there. That said, things could be getting a little bit hairy for these three in just a little bit, because that dragon sound you heard, that was the 12 of Mr. David Schmidt just in front of them, looking to soon be the first car a lap down. And with the connection issues that he has been having in that number 12 machine, it could make passing this lapped car a little bit hairier than a normal pass on a lap car. You can see him up there having a little bit of a connection issue in that dark black and blue number 12, having a little bit of issues with the quantum physics of existing in this plane of the universe. So gonna have to watch out for that. It's definitely scary to try and make a pass on someone when you can't exactly see where they are on the track, and that's what caught up Morelli earlier on in this race, and we will just have to see. Speaking of Morelli getting around Bryce Walker in that number 16 machine. That's going to move him up to the 6th position. Morelli only up one spot from where he qualified, but having a bit of a hard charge and run here tonight. After all, he did have that incident with Schmidt back on lap number 2 that sent him all the way back to the back of the field, and he's already back up to P number 6. But it's almost an 11-second deficit that he has to make up to catch back up to the drivers in the top 5. So not entirely out of the woods yet, but things are looking up for that 007 machine of Mr. Nico Morelli. Up in the middle of the field, these drivers kind of just running their little bit of their own race. Looking up here, that 70 of Jason Mong, the unsponsored iRock entry. Currently, bit of a bubble in front of him, call it about 5 seconds, and another 2 seconds standing cars behind him. So Mong just able to cruise a little bit, run his race, have a little bit of leisurely Sunday driving, he's probably one of the drivers that it's really not hoping for a caution right now, because if that caution comes out, that's going to bunch up the field, and that is going to make his job a whole lot harder. Because, I mean, P number 4, not a bad place to finish. Of course, the higher the position, the better. That's just straight up objective. There's no way around that, but even then, 4th out of 10th, pretty solid place to be right now, and we're still very early on in the season, so a 4th place finish would be a pretty solid one for Mr. Mong, and I believe if everything was all said and done right here, right now, if we just called the race right here on lap 38, Mong being in P4 would bump him above Jason Gardner and move him up to the 4th position overall in the championship standings. So all things considered, things are going pretty well for the driver of that number 70 machine. Sure enough, this battle up here for the lead is where all of the drama is at. Steven Rex having built up a little bit of a gap as they got around Watkins and Smith, and now he's looking to try and get around another lap car. That's the 56 of Sierrick. And just in front of him, the 16 of Bryce Walker as well. Sierrick going to pull it way up high in that number 56. He does not want anything to do with any of that. Just going to let the leaders on by, keep on running his race, and let them keep on running theirs. So that's going to put Bryce Walker's head as the next one on the chopping block in that number 16. Walker still running his line, 2 seconds behind Nico Morelli. So still potential for him to catch up to the driver of the 007. 41 laps in the books. We'll just have to see, will Walker be able to hold on to being on the lead lap, or is he going to be the next one put a lap down? Sure enough, heading down into turns 3 and 4, he's going to pull it up high, and that is going to allow our race leaders to have a wide open racetrack yet again. And this is something very interesting. Nico Morelli going to be the first driver down on pit lane, lap number 42. Looks like he's going to be seeing if he can't try and get some extra positions under his belt by potentially short pitting the field. He's coming down here pretty early. I don't know if that's going to give him fuel to the end or not in that 007, but we will just have to see. It does not look like he's taking tires, though, which is interesting, because how it takes a good 40 seconds to get a full tank of fuel in these street stocks. So I'm kind of surprised he's not taking tires, because if you take effectively a full tank of gas, then it's just not going to affect you if you take tires. But I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on Morelli, because it is potential. Okay, Morelli is pitting back out, so does not look like Morelli had any sort of trouble there. I was getting a little bit worried, like, it is something wrong here. But sure enough, Morelli back out on the speedway. He is being scored back into the 10th position, 3 laps down, but as long as he gets that car back up to speed, he should cycle back up a couple of positions. Now, Morelli getting a little bit loose off the corner, but the one thing Morelli is absolutely hoping for right now is for there to not be any cautions for the rest of the race. If a caution comes out, that could be just outright the end of his race. So side by side, and 16 getting very loose. That's Bryce Walker using a little bit of his dirt track experience to drift it through turns 1 and 2. Not exactly the optimal line. If this were the dirt version of the USA International Speedway, which does exist on iRacing, then that would have been a pretty solid move. But here on the asphalt, not necessarily what you want to be doing. And he's doing it again. He's doing the sick drift. Is he going to be able to save it? He is. I don't think we are able to award him style points for that. But I'll tell you what, Bryce Walker is doing some pretty sick drifts through these corners. He may not be the fastest car on the speedway, but it's looking like he's trying to make a name for himself as being the coolest one out there, because those are some solid drifts he's hitting. Notice how I'm giving him credit and saying that this is definitely something he's doing intentionally and not the tires on that number 16 being way overheated. getting close to the halfway point in this race, though, so I would not be surprised if we end up seeing Walker and probably all these other drivers that are currently stuck down a lap making their trip down to pit lane fairly shortly. And I would imagine that Walker is not the only char on the track that's going to be considering putting some new tires on these street stocks. The things have spread out for the most part around this field. Currently, the closest battle on the speedway is actually the battle between Walker and that 56 of Sierra. About 0.7 of a second between the two, so not a whole lot of a battle per se, but these two currently the closest on the speedway. Walker does seem to be gaining ground on corner entry, but losing it a little bit on exit. And you can see, looks like Walker having a little bit of handling issues under the hood of that 16. But he's trying to make it work for him one way or another. It's just a question of how long can he keep doing it while maintaining the quality of those tires, because that is not going to be doing a whole lot of favors in the long run. A little bit further up in the front, McRae catching back up to Mr. Steven Rex. It's going to narrow down our battle for the lead to about half a second. We are officially halfway through this race, so I'd imagine sooner rather than later the gloves are starting to come off for these drivers, but sure enough, before you can throw any punches, you do have to actually catch up to the car in front of you. So McRae, however, is closing the gap fairly steadily. It looks like Rex either potentially... Oh, trouble. Looks like Bryce Walker might have hit a sick drift a little bit harder than he intended to. That's going to send him off the track. No caution's going to come out because he is going to be keeping that car pointed in the right direction. Let's see if we can't take a little bit of a look back here to see what happened to that number 16 machine to have sent him down into the infield. Coming out of turn number 4, just a little bit of oversteer. The rear end slid out from behind him, and when you've got that happening to you, not a whole lot you can do to recover from that. So that's going to bump Walker down back to P number 8, and Schmidt about 3 seconds behind. So Walker has a little bit of work cut out for him now to try and get back up to the front. And currently, McRae has closed the gap on Rex yet again. It's probably about 0.2 of a second, so McRae looking to potentially nudge his way up into the front of this race here. All these drivers are going to have to come down to pit lane still. Currently, Morelli down in P number 10, the only driver to have come down to pit lane. So everyone else in the field still has to figure out just what exactly they plan to do for pit strategy. Not a whole lot of time left in this race, so some of these drivers may be trying to see if they can't wait for a caution to come down, because if you don't, then there's a very decent potential you might end up a lap down with your fuel stop. Sure enough, just up ahead, that's going to be the 12 of Schmidt looking to potentially get lapped a second time, and that's going to throw these two drivers into that gauntlet yet again of passing the car that's having a little bit of issues with quantum physics. David Schmidt in that number 12, keeping it up to the high line. And sure enough, Rex is going to go down low and make the overtake, and it looks like everyone's going to get through everything fairly smoothly. McRae lifting just a little bit, not entirely confident on what is going on outside of the right side of his car, but he's going to make the pass as well. And these two drivers now have a clear speedway up in front of them, at least for another couple of laps before they catch up to, I believe the next driver on the list would be that 16 of Walker. No, it is the 007 of Morelli, the next car in front of them, and We have another car down on pit lane. That is the 70 of Jason Mong. That's going to be the second driver throwing his hat into the ring to try and make the pit strategy work for him. And will we see tires taken on this number 70? Looks like the verdict is going to be yes. Dave Sierrick not coming down to pit lane. I'm not sure why our timing and scoring board just said that he was, but we do have a couple other drivers heading down. Jason Gardner, Bill Watkins, both down on the speedway as well, down on pit lane. Looks like this verdict for Watkins going to be tires. Jason Mong looks like he also got tires, and Jason Gardner going to be heading down next. Will Gardner be taking tires? Sources say yes. So it looks like right sides is going to be the general consensus by these drivers, which is understandable for the most part. Taking all four not going to be particularly beneficial. And as things cycle back out, that's going to make Sierrick and potentially trouble. Trouble indeed. Caution flag out on the speedway. Looks like Bryce Walker hit one sick drift a little bit too hard in that number 16. That's going to bring out the first caution of the evening and the second caution of the entire racing season. And I'll tell you what, race fans, Stephen Rex, Tyler McRae, Travis Sukup, Dave Sierrick, those are four drivers that are very, very happy right now. Let's see if we can't take a look back here and see what happened to the driver of that number 16 to bring out the yellow flag. Coming out of what looks, or going down into turn number 1, and that car gets way loose, and he's not a whole lot that he was able to do to save it. Managed to bring it to a stop without hitting any other cars, but it is going to slow him down enough to have the safety officials throw that yellow flag. Let's see if we can't get an onboard camera here with Bryce Walker looking on the helmet camera of that driver heading down into turn number 1. It just got way loose on him, and he managed to do an amazing job of not hitting Jason Gardner on his pit exit there, so kudos to Walker for getting that car to a stop without hitting anyone else. But that is going to bring out our first caution of the evening and potentially throw a very big wrench in some of these drivers' plans. Let's see if we can't get another view of that. Let's take a look down from Jason Gardner's perspective, actually, as he exited pit lane there. Right on board with that number 93, and a little bit too close for comfort. But looks like Walker was the only car involved in all of that. He's going to be coming back out on the speedway. Scored back in the 5th position, it looks like. So sure enough, that is going to put the whole rest of the field from Walker on back in a very difficult situation. All of these drivers really needed a caution to not come out in order to make their pit strategies work, because now that the yellow is out, everyone behind, actually it looks like as our timing and scoring is getting updated, it looks like potentially everyone behind Sierrick is going to get trapped a lap down, it looks like. As it looks like our timing and scoring is not entirely certain on where everyone needs to be. So let's give these drivers a minute to get themselves sorted out and lined back up behind the iRacing.com pace car before we give any definitive call on that, because it does look like we are having a little bit of an issue, a little bit of a miscommunication between race officials and drivers on where everyone is supposed to be lining up here tonight. But either way, we are 65 laps in the books. Looks like drivers starting to get waved around the pace car. So Tyler McRae is going to be scored as our race leader after that yellow. Everyone's stacking back up 2 by 2. Lights still on the pace truck, so we do still have at least one more time around the speedway to get ourselves sorted out. So this season, part of what might be causing this trouble is that this season caution laps do not count here tonight, so that could be causing a little bit of confusion, because I know iRacing handles the timing and scoring for drivers under yellow differently when caution laps count versus when they don't count. But it does look like, for the most part, everyone is in their right positions now. And it does look like McRae, Rex, and Sukup going to be the only 3 drivers on the lead lap because of that caution. Everyone else going to be trapped a lap down. So lights are off on the iRacing.com pace car. Things are about to get very spicy, and I'll tell you what, Mong, Schmidt, Sierrick, those 3 drivers are all banking on another caution coming out on this restart. Green flag up in the air. Tyler McRae, our race leader. Rex and Sukup falling in line just behind. Everyone else currently a lap down, but not out of this race. They are all having their own battles back there. Sure enough, Nico Morelli, for example, was looking down to the inside of Sierrick, but he backed out of the move. Schmidt pulling it up high. A little bit of a scary pass there for, I believe that is, I want to say Jason Mong down on the inside of that number 12 machine. Sure enough, all these cars all on differing laps, but all trying to get themselves into a more favorable position. So at least if a caution comes back out, they can potentially find themselves in the lucky dog position. Because, for example, Gardner, Morelli, Walker, these 3 drivers are still battling for position. They're just not battling for position on the lead lap. So down but not out for a lot of these drivers, and looks like that is Bill Watkins pulling it up to the high side, currently being scored 3 laps down, so not wanting to be involved with any of these other drivers' battles, because Watkins, his fate pretty much sealed down there back in 10th, unless we somehow had 12 cautions in the next 30 laps. Watkins pretty much does not have any chance of getting back on the lead lap, but trouble. Bryce Walker's around, and David Schmidt as well. Both drivers going to be spinning it down the front stretch. It looked like Walker might have not been able to see Schmidt. Looks like Schmidt did have a little bit of a connection issue there heading down the front stretch. That's going to bring out the second caution of the evening, and that should be putting Jason Mong back on the lead lap of this event. Let's see if we can't take a look back here and see just what happened to these 2 drivers. So looking at that 16 and that 12 heading down into turns 3 and 4. That 12 machine blinking pretty badly. Walker heads down low to try and get around him, and looks like he potentially has a little bit of a wiggle out of the corner, and that's going to send both of these drivers spinning down the front stretch. See if we can't get a better view of that. Let's actually break out our chopper camera. We haven't used that one in a little while. Looking at the 12 and the 16 coming out of 3 and 4. Walker goes down low, but has a little bit of a wiggle, sends him back up in the speedway, and just nudges the right, or the left rear, excuse me, of that 12 of David Schmidt, and that's going to send both drivers around, bringing out our second caution of the evening. Not a whole lot that could have been done there, just a little bit of a racing incident. Let's ride on board with Bryce Walker, looking down on the onboard view of that number 16. You can see a bit difficult to predict the movements of that number 12 car. A little bit of a wiggle. That's going to collect them both and just send them both spinning. Thankfully, no one behind either of them to risk collecting even further. But that's going to be a bit of a heartbreaker for some of these drivers, but also be a blessing for some of the others, because that should put Jason Mong back up on the lead lap of this race. Of course, now that we're under yellow with caution laps not counting, the timing and scoring currently a little bit confused as to where everyone is supposed to be. Looks like that 12 of David Schmidt is down on pit lane, and it looks like he just took 4 tires on that number 12 street stock, so gonna have to keep an eye on him and see what those new tires are gonna be able to do for him, because that could potentially work out very well in his favor depending on how this all plays out. So currently our 3 race leaders, Rex, McRae, and Sukup, all waiting to have the lapped cars be waved around the pace car so they can get themselves all sorted out into the correct positions. And it looks like David Schmidt is actually coming back down pit lane. Potentially he did not get the amount of fuel he was hoping for in that number 12 machine, because yeah, that's his second stop under this caution. Generally that is indicative of someone making a very big oopsie down on pit road. Currently Schmidt being scored back into the 6th position. That is going to be putting him on the same lap as Jason Gardner, Nico Morelli, and Bryce Walker, it looks like. And sure enough, all those cars getting waved around the pace car. So it looks like Steven Rex should be scored as our race leader when we end up going green flag racing again. I would say probably going to be 2-ish more laps under caution, just to make sure everything gets sorted out here tonight. Of course, gotta take the time under this yellow to thank everyone for tuning into the broadcast, both from myself and from the folks here at the Attrition Sim Race Campus. The support is always appreciated, and it's always great to be able to come out every Monday night and watch these drivers put on a show week in and week out. Sure enough, lights are off on the iRacing.com pace car. Steven Rex going to be scored as our race leader. Tyler McRae to his outside. Travis Sukup, Jason Mong. And it looks like Dave Sierek also going to be scored on the lead lap. Going to be 70 laps completed when we go green flag racing. It'll be 30 laps to go for these late model drivers. iRacing.com pace car is off. Green flag up in the air. And it looks like everyone's negotiating it fairly cleanly. Tyler McRae up on the high side, generally not where you want to be. Sure enough, he is going to file it back down as soon as possible. And other driver stuck up in the place where you don't want to be. That's the number 93 of Jason Gardner up on the high line. Down to his inside, Jason Mong in that number 70. And oh, almost trouble. Morelli almost making contact with Mong there. Morelli going to go down to the low line. He was really loose on corner entry, getting down onto the apron a bit, but he's keeping it down under him in that 007. But definitely a scary moment for both of those drivers. And Morelli's going to make that pass fairly handily. That said, it's not a pass for position, as Jason Mong in that 70 is on the lead lap. Morelli and Gardner both are a lap down, so getting around Mong not going to do a whole lot for either of these drivers, except for making catching back up to each other a little bit easier. And further back, the 2 drivers that had our last caution come out are side by side yet again, and that's trouble. David Schmidt is around. Not that we can really see him with his connection issues, and it looks like he's got it going again, but he was 90 degrees sideways through that corner, and sure enough, he has lost a whole lot of ground there. Tried to get a pass down on the inside of Bryce Walker, and it just did not work out how he wanted it to do. Going to be 75 laps in the books as we cross the line this time by. Going to be making it 25 laps to go, the final stretch of this event, and boy, what an event it has been. But it's not time to close the deck and put away our cards. Still plenty of opportunity for McRae and Sukup to catch back up to Rex and get themselves back in the lead of this race. Rex, of course, was the pole sitter in that number 10 Rex's Garage entry, but just because you started in the front doesn't mean that you will finish in the front. That said, looks like last time by, McRae and Sukup both set substantially slower lap times than Rex did. So Rex still has a whole lot of speed under the hood of that number 10 machine. That's going to be making McRae and Sukup's job very, very difficult. Last time by, again, Rex faster than McRae and Sukup. So Rex having a very solid run under that car. It looks like potentially he might have just managed his tires a little bit better, because it doesn't seem like this is a matter of having the best racing line or anything sort of that effect. It looks like McRae and Sukup might have just used out their tires a little bit more than Rex has, and sometimes that is what makes all the difference, especially at some of these longer tracks where tires can get worn down fairly easily. Looking around the field, everyone decently spread out here tonight. This battle for the lead between Rex and McRae, the closest battle out on the speedway. Sure enough, you can see, call it about 3 car lengths between P1 and 2 and another 4 between 2 and 3. So a little bit of room building up between these drivers, but McRae closing the distance again in that number 99. He is not give up that easy. 20 laps to go, so the clock is ticking for him though. But look at that, he is actually closing the gap every single corner in. As we cross the line that time by, McRae setting a lap almost a full 1/10 of a second faster than Rex. That is a pretty big deal. Rex found some sort of burst of speed in that number 99 machine, or McRae found some burst of speed in that number 99 machine, because he is consistently gaining on Rex and consistently setting faster lap times than Rex, just entirely out of the blue. And sure enough, nose to tail now, Rex has his work cut out for him by a long shot. Rex, the only driver of the Drop and Bombs racing team to have not picked up a win so far this season. As poetic as it would be for these 3 drivers to each have a single win under their belt, McRae is not just going to hand it to the driver of that number 10. Sure enough, coming out of turn number 2, it almost looked like he was thinking about using the bumper a little bit there. Heading down into 3 and 4, still just right there on him. Backing off just a tiny bit, but not a whole lot. Just waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike, and Rex just doing everything he can to try and hold off the driver of that number 99. Let's actually ride on board with that number 10. Look down at the bumper cam on that number 12. You can see just how close things are between Rex and McRae. McRae is keeping the pressure down no matter what. But sure enough, yellow flag gonna come out. That is not the end of the story for this battle between Rex and McRae. Let's see if we can't figure out just what happened. I'm not seeing anything on my timing and scoring about what brought out the yellow, but I saw that Schmidt passed Bryce Walker right before the yellow came out, so I think whatever happened might have been involving that. Let's see if we can't get a look back. Sure enough, that looks like trouble right there, and okay, that was quite the little bit of a nudge. Let's see if we can't look a little bit further back. Let's take it a full lap further back to just try and see what exactly happened to Bryce Walker there in that number 16 machine, because that was quite an impact to not be considered a crash by the timing and scoring program. So again, looking down at that number 16 of Bryce Walker, that Rick Motec entry, I believe next lap is when the incident occurs. This is just the closest place we could find for what happened to him. Everything looking fine so far, but I think it's when he heads down into turns 3 and 4 here that the trouble occurs. A bit slow on corner entry, and it almost looks like he was trying to come down to pit lane and just couldn't get the car stopped in time, and not a whole lot Bill Watkins would have been able to do to avoid that besides make a very dangerous swerve to the right. And Bryce Walker still keeping it going in the right direction, so definitely unfortunate for that driver. That's going to be what brings out the third caution of the evening on lap number 85. So that's going to slow things down once again. And if my timing and scoring is correct, that means that Jason Gardner in the 93 should be getting scored as the lucky dog. And once again, we will find ourselves with a battle of the Jasons. Gonna keep an eye on that number 93 while we're under this yellow. I do definitely want to see if he's going to be scored as the lucky dog. I believe he should, unless it ends up going to Jason Mong. Both drivers still side by side behind the pace truck, so it's still, it's looking like it's still waiting on who the lucky dog should be. It looks like race control might be just as confused as I am as to who is supposed to be getting the wave around here. Gonna give him just a second to get everything sorted out. And the lights are off on the iRacing.com pace car, so I guess Jason Mong was the lucky dog and we just missed it somehow. Okay. So, Stephen Rex, Tyler McRae, still P1 and 2. That caution's not going to change it. It looks like everyone's adventures down on pit lane are taken care of for the evening, so we should not see any more pit stops out of any of these drivers unless it's for damage. So that's how things are going to line up. McRae, Rex, Sukup, Sierrick, our top 4. Green flag up in the air yet again. And Rex off to a very solid restart. That's probably what he was banking on, is just, you know, McRae is setting faster lap times than me, so I have to make sure that I get the best start I can on that initial restart, and it looks like it worked out in his favor, but McRae is right there, and they're going to make contact. Both drivers getting incredibly loose down the front stretch, but both managing to keep it in the right direction, but that could have been very disastrous for both those drivers very quickly. And I'll tell you what, race fans, we have seen stranger things happen in the ASRC Oval Series. We have seen teammates spin teammates. We have seen lead drivers spin on the last lap entirely of their own accord. So the contact between two drivers battling it out in the final moments of the race is certainly not a very big surprise. And McRae going to be peeking down low. It looks like he's finally going to be trying to get around that number 10 of Rex. He saw the opportunity arise, and he is going to take it. And Travis Sukup is right there too to try and see if he can't capitalize on it as well. And contact door to door. Rex going to get bumped up the speedway, and Sukup's getting his nose in there too. And trouble. Sure enough, it's the commentator's curse. I made the mistake of saying that I wouldn't be surprised if these two ended up around, and that is exactly what they did. Tyler McRae, Stephen Rex. Driver position number 1 and position number 2. both spinning out down the back stretch. That's going to bring out the 4th yellow flag of the evening. And I'll tell you what, if you wanted to see the standings of this race shaken up, that is certainly one way to do it. Let's take a look back here and see just what happened to lead to the spin between these two drivers. There was a little bit of a cascading effect here. That 145, Travis Sukup diving his nose in there. That 10 of Steven Rex getting loose off the corner. He tries to save it. He overcorrects and gets into the right rear of the 99. Everyone swerving to avoid this wreck and everyone managing to stay out of it besides these two. So some very heads-up driving by these drivers throughout the field. Let's see if we can't get another look back at that. Race leader Tyler McRae in that Upchurch entry for Dropping Bombs Racing. There was not a whole lot he was going to be able to do. That 10 just got a little bit loose. He tries to save it, and not really anywhere that these two drivers could go. Let's take a ride on board with Nico Morelli heading down into that incident. Right on board with the 007, currently being scored a couple of laps down. Keep your eyes on those 3 lead cars. Just a little bit of a tap was enough to send them all spinning, and of course, very heads-up driving by everyone in the field to be able to avoid that whole incident. And sure enough, we now find ourselves in a very interesting situation because Tyler McRae, Steven Rex, the 2 drivers involved in that incident, are both down on pit lane now. And I get the feeling that it is not for fuel. But Tyler McRae coming back out, and Steven Rex still stuck down on pit lane though, in that number 10 machine. He's coming out too. Very, very interesting. So now it's a matter of getting things sorted out with where these drivers need to be behind the iRacing.com pace truck. Everyone getting themselves sorted back out. We are under the yellow flag. Sure enough, it looks like currently Travis Sukup being scored as the race leader with Jason Mong in P number 2. Dave Sierrick rounding out our podium currently according to our timing and scoring. Tyler McRae, Steven Rex still on the lead lap. They did not go a lap down from that incident, but still now back to the 4th and 5th positions respectively. That might put a little bit of mellow into their tempers. Or alternatively, we could see it flare even higher as these 2 drivers try to push their way back up to the front, because we are going to be 10 laps to go when we go racing again. And I'll tell you what, if the gloves weren't off before, they certainly are now. There is not going to be a whole lot of playing nice between these drivers, because we have officially entered do or die territory. That said, it does look like we are going to be spending another lap under caution just to make sure everyone's got themselves all sorted out in the right positions. There we go, lights off on the iRacing pace truck, so we will be going green flag racing again next time by. And I'll tell you what, race fans, I don't think we had McRae and Rex wrecking each other on our bingo cards for this evening. And now Travis Sukup in that 145, looking to try and get his 2nd win of the season. And if he were to get that win here tonight, that would be another driver added to the list of unique drivers winning at the USA International Speedway for the past 9 seasons. But lights off on the iRacing.com pace car. Here we go again. 10 laps to go. Will anyone play nice with each other? Probably not. But for right now, let's just try and hold on. And Nico Morelli going way up high very early on. Looking like he potentially overdrove the corner a little bit. That's going to move him back down to the 6th position. He is battling for position with that 93 of Jason Gardner. Side by side down the front stretch, this is the battle for the 6th position. And it looks like Morelli is going to make it work for him. Now, Morelli, not any more positions that he can gain right now, but if another caution were to come out, he would be the lucky dog. So Morelli putting himself in a good position to at least set himself up for success if the cards play in his favor. And back there, David Schmidt getting very loose off the corner. And it does look like Walker and Watkins have both retired from the event. So that's going to have Walker back in the 9th position and Watkins back in 10th for this evening. Morelli, Gardner, and Schmidt still all battling for position, and all three of them could potentially be finding themselves back on the lead lap, depending on how these final 7 laps end up playing out. Currently looking at one of the closest battles on the speedway, that is Gardner and Morelli, the 93 and the 007, battling it out for position 6 and 7. Gardner bouncing off the wall just a little bit, trying to build up the speed necessary to get around Morelli, and Morelli getting down on the apron just a little bit in that 007 entry. Gardner looking ready to set up the pass, and sure enough, he's going to send it down low. Side by side through turns 3 and 4. And Gardner is going to have the advantage out of the corner, but Morelli actually gets a little bit of a run on the high line, so Morelli not out of this battle. But Morelli getting a little bit loose out of turns 2 there, so still holding on though in that 007 machine. But now he's going to file it back down to the inside line. He's decided this battle not necessarily where he wants to be. That is enough of that for the driver of the 007. 4 laps to go though, and the battle is heating up in the front. McRae has battled his way back up into the podium position, and now he's setting his sights on P number 2. Mong gonna drift up the corner just a little bit, and now McRae finds himself on the cusp of being back in 2nd place. Now all that's left in his way is Mr. Travis Sukup. But he's not going to get it. He's going to end up in the outside wall. That's going to be some big trouble for him. Going to hurt his momentum just a bit. 3 laps to go and a full second between himself and the leader. That is a big ask even for a driver as talented as Tyler McRae. Going to be 2 to go this time by. Mong and Rex battling it out as well. Rex looking to try and at least get himself back on the podium as well. These drivers both trying to see if they can't scrape something back together after that mishap from the last couple of laps. White flag up in the air. Mong going a little bit up the speedway. Rex really pushing with everything he's got to try and get around that number 70. He's going to send it down low, heading down into turns 3 and 4. But it's not going to be enough. And coming out of the corner, Travis Sukup is our race leader, followed by Tyler McRae and Jason Mong, rounding out the podium here tonight. What an end to this race. I don't think that's what anyone saw coming to play out for tonight's event, but sometimes that's just how the cookie crumbles. Travis Sukup going to be taking home the win and making himself the two-time winner for this season, and now crowning himself as the 9th unique winner here at the USA International Speedway, and continuing the trend of having a different winner every single season at this track. So don't go anywhere, race fans. We will be back in just a moment with interviews with your top 3 finishers here tonight. Alrighty, race fans, welcome back to round number 3 of season 9 of the ASRC Oval Series. And finally, Mr. Travis Sukup up here in the booth with me. I'll tell you what, for the past couple of 3, 4 seasons, it has been race after race after race of you getting home on the podium, but just not having that last little bit of speed you needed to get the win under your belt. And now here you are, 2 wins in a row. How are you feeling now that everything's said and done here tonight?
Oh, pretty good. I got real lucky there. Worked out for me.
Sometimes a little bit of luck is all it takes, but still the skill of the driver that got you in the position to capitalize on that in the first place. So, of course, congratulations on another win and a very solid run here tonight. Do you reckon if anything played out differently, if you still would have been able to give things to McRae and Rex here tonight?
No, I think they had me covered. I must have made a few boo boos because I couldn't run with them. Definitely not for the long run.
Fair enough. Either way, it still worked out for you. Next week, heading to the Five Flags Speedway. You feeling like that is a track where you could potentially be picking up a third win this season?
I doubt it. That's one of my least favorite tracks to go to.
That's fair. We all have the tracks we don't like, and of course, we do have the drop weeks for a reason, but either way, I do look forward to seeing you out there next week. But before I let you go, celebrate your second win in a row. Anyone you like to thank on the side of that 145 for getting you up here?
Just those two guys that crashed each other so I could get the win. I really appreciate that.
Well, good deal. Thank you for coming out as always. I was looking forward to seeing you out here, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
All right. We thank you. Thank you for what you do.
And finishing back into position number 2, the driver that was contesting for the lead of the race all race long, but just in the end, not enough to have it. Now that everything's all said and done, Tyler, how are you feeling with that crazy end of this race?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to come in second. Um, Fenders are all on it, maybe a little banged up. We were having a good time racing hard. I mean, we talk trash to each other the whole time. We help each other, but we also like talk trash, like, oh, I'm not going to hold off hitting you this time. And so we're trying all we can to beat each other. And Steve he said he got loose and hit the wall. I'm not quite sure if I pinched him or not, but it wasn't a big deal. I mean, I wish I could have kept battling for the win, but I'm happy for Mike too. And also Jason. Jason got a good run too, so um, good for him as well.
Yeah, very good show put on by everyone in the field, and definitely a good reminder that the race is not over until it's over. And I don't know about y'all, but I don't think anyone had that incident in their bingo cards here tonight. But still, a second place finish, definitely a very solid one for you. It's looking at the point standings that might be bumping you back to position number 2 in the point standings, because right now, heading into this race, you and Sukup were only 2 points off from each other. But heading into next week, Five Flag Speedway, you think that could be a track where you could put yourself back on top of the standings?
Oh yeah, definitely. Any week is a chance to win or get in a wreck, so it'll be fun. It'll be fun. I feel like we're all going to be competitive there again. So happy to see some of the other guys getting up here, and appreciate all the guys who gave us room too tonight. That was really appreciated when we came up on them.
Yeah, definitely a good show put on by everyone, and of course, I always appreciate seeing y'all all out here this evening. But before I send you off to go celebrate your podium finish here tonight, anyone you want to thank on the side of that number 99 for getting you up here?
Definitely the dropping bombs crew. I mean, all the guys back um, that run with us week in, week out on our different races and work on setups and just have a fun time. SimSpeedShop.com for all the good gadgets they got for iRacing. ASRC League for all the fun races they put on. Appreciate you, Aiden, for all the races that you broadcast, and I really enjoy going back and watching them. And then all the other competitors, I really appreciate them. And we run hard each week with them, and um, just want to give them a little shout out too.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out, Tyler, and I look forward to seeing y'all at the Five Flag Speedway next week.
You got it. Have a good night.
You too. And finally, rounding out the podium here tonight, Mr. Jason Mong. It has been a little bit of time since we've last been able to chat, but it is definitely a pleasure having you up here in the booth again. How are you feeling now that everything's said and done here tonight?
And I feel a little bit that it was a gimme to get the third place. With those two having the incident there towards the end. But I do need to thank Tyler for sure for making me work on my setup a little bit harder, and I definitely picked up a little bit of speed tonight by him sharing his setup and helping out there. So do appreciate everything that he did there for everybody in the the race. So
For sure, and after all, maybe that incident was a little bit of luck, but it's like you said, you had some pretty good speed under the hood of that number 70 here tonight, and you were the driver that had the car in that position to capitalize on their mistakes. So give yourself some credit for getting up here on the podium. Definitely some good work on your end. And looking at the point standings, I do believe that this should be enough to move you up above Jason Gardner. So that will be bumping you up into P number 4 in the championship standings. We're still early on in the season, but that is a very respectable place to be.
yeah, I don't really do it for the points. I like running with all the guys here, and I just figure, run, make consistent races, and the points will take care of themselves.
It's always a good way to look at things. And sure enough, heading into next week, we're heading down to the Five Flags Speedway. So at least keeping it in the same state. No ridiculous asking y'all to drive y'all to California and then drive back to North Carolina and then back to California like we did last season.
Yeah,
How are you feeling
save a
heading
little on
into that
fuel.
track?
Uh, I don't know. I mean, I haven't really run Five Flags a lot. I mean, basically, when I ran Five Flags, it was all in the league here with ASRC, and uh, I just take it week to week. I mean, I show up pretty much on time as soon as the server opens and start practicing, and we go from there each week.
Fair enough. Well, I certainly look forward to seeing what y'all are able to put on next week. But before I let you go and celebrate getting up here on the podium here tonight, anyone you'd like to thank on the side of that 70 machine for getting you up here?
Well, I don't have any sponsors on the side of this one yet, but I do want to thank ASRC and Jason Gardner for putting on the Oval Series and keeping it going here. Thank you for putting on the broadcast. I do enjoy watching them. I always watch them after the race to see the different perspective of what went on in the races. So, want to thank uh, Dirtbag Racing, the teammates of mine over there, with good group of guys, and we always have fun. So I think that's about it.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out and congratulations on the podium finish. And I look forward to seeing you next week.
All right. Thank you, sir. You have a good week.
You too. And you heard it here first, race fans. Interviews with your top 3 finishers: Travis Sukup, Tyler McRae, Jason Mong. 3 drivers putting on a heck of a show this evening. And it's a bit of a finish that I don't think any of us really saw coming. But before we sign off for the evening, let's take a look down at how the rest of the field rounded out this evening. Of course, Sukup, McRae, Mong, your top 3 finishers here tonight. P number 4 going back to Steven Rex in that number 10 machine, followed by the 56 of Dave Sierrick rounding out the top 5. Back in P number 6, the 93 of Jason Gardner, followed by the 007 of Nico Morelli. 8th going to go back to the 12 of David Schmidt, with the 16 of Bryce Walker going back into the 9th position. And finally, rounding out this 10-car field here tonight, going to be the 337 of Bill Watkins. So, after all is said and done, that is all we have for y'all here tonight at the USA International Speedway. Thank you all for tuning in and coming out to support the league. It is always appreciated. And, of course, next week, same day, same time, Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern, round number 4 of Season 9 at the Five Flags Speedway. Definitely should be a fun one, so be sure to tune into that. And of course, if you're interested in joining the league and participating in that race, be sure to head to www.asrcracing.com or join the ASRC League on the iRacing League directory. Thank you all for coming out, though, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a good evening, race fans.